This is the Dell Dimension 8100 from 2000. That's right, I have one. The 8100 was the first 8000 series Dimension that Dell made in the early and mid 2000s. It was supposed to be Dell's flagship Dimension, basically, with the highest end parts and, of course, being the most expensive. This PC would have retailed for about $2,000 when it was new, and that's kind of significant because this is the lower end one. You could have made this thing way more expensive. The 8100 is more infamously known for being one of the first Pentium 4 PCs, and that means this thing uses a Socket 423 platform. Socket 423, for those who didn't know, is basically what the Pentium 4 started its life on. It wasn't received very well, specifically because of its use of RDRAM, which we'll get into later, but it was basically more complicated and annoying than traditional DDR and SD RAM. As far as features of this PC goes, it has a 3¼ inch floppy drive built into the case, so I don't like it very much, but at least it works. A 5¼ inch floppy drive that I added in after I got this computer. It doesn't actually seem to work with the existing floppy drive, however, so I left it unplugged for now. A DVD-ROM drive and a CD writer drive, so this thing would have had pretty decent optical media capabilities for its time. The power button, which is broken on this PC. This PC is 24 years old, and the plastic on it really shows. But it still is held in for the most part. You have to use some force to get it to fall out, so it's fine. Directly below the power button is this support button, which I kind of don't really understand, since as you'll see later, the support center program this PC comes with isn't that interesting. And it also has a hard drive light underneath it. This PC is too old to have any front I/O or anything, so it's pretty boring otherwise. But it means the front panel is pretty clean. On the back of the PC, we have the power supply cutouts for the power plug and cooling fan, as well as parallel and serial ports. No VGA on this one. Because this motherboard uses the Intel 850 chipset, this PC doesn't have any kind of integrated video, and in this computer's case, no integrated audio either. It also has traditional PS2 keyboard and mouse ports, 4 diagnostic LEDs, which is a feature that Dell continued to do for a while after this PC. It's a good feature. 4 USB 1.1 ports, and 10100 Ethernet. It also has the cutout for the rear 92mm case fan. For the expansion cards, it has a VGA port and a TV out port, and then the sound card has a game port and 5.1 channel audio. And there's a modem, because you can't forget that. And underneath that is this release clip. This is how you open the side panel. You might have noticed on the front of this PC there's a button, and that's actually how you open the case. By pressing this button, the side panel ejects. It's locked in with that locking mechanism, so it's important to unlock it. Once you do that, the side panel lifts off like a supercar door. Inside the PC, the first thing we notice is the power supply, which on this computer is proprietary. This entire computer is actually proprietary, I should mention. If you can see, the motherboard is way longer than a standard board, if it wasn't already clear later by the weird I/O placements. This is kind of unfortunate because I do like this case. I would like to do something with this computer. I think it could be a decent retro gaming machine almost, but it's kind of held back by not being able to swap any of the parts or do anything with it. It basically means this PC is stuck with the Socket 423 platform. The second most obvious thing is this green cooling baffle, which when removed, and yes, just like the power button, it's also broken, reveals the heatsink and cooling fan. It's not got a super amazing cooling solution, but given that this is basically about equivalent to a Pentium 3, it's fine. This platform was basically obsolete after 2001. It was replaced by Socket 478. A lot of it was because of the RAM bus situation. Most people just stuck with traditional AMD or Pentium 3 PCs because RAM bus was, well, not very good. It was technically more enhanced, but it was way more expensive and it was way more of a pain in the butt to use. So most people just avoided it. And there wasn't really a lot of reason to upgrade to this CPU over the Pentium 3. So, early adopter tax. I would pull the heatsink off to show the CPU since it's basically more like a Pentium 3 in size, but I'm a bit worried that I'm going to snap this heatsink bracket, so I'll use a picture instead. It came with two 64MB memory modules for a total of 128 megs. I bought two 512MB modules to add in with the existing RAM since I didn't have any Rambus RAM. Before it, those slots were filled with these blanking cards because Rambus doesn't work without them. It's honestly kind of annoying. This stuff is way less common, so I didn't have any else, and it didn't help that it shipped with only 128 megs of RAM. I ended up buying what I did just so I'd never have to worry about RAM again. Above the RAM slots is the proprietary power supply connectors. The original power supply in this thing died, so I had to replace it with another one, and as you can tell it's kind of broken, but again, I couldn't put a standard one in it. At least the replacement is 330 watts instead of the original 250 watt. Also next to the CPU heatsink is the chipset heatsink for the Intel 850 chipset. And it's all cooled by this 92mm Daytech fan, which in traditional Daytech fan fashion has bad bearings and sounds pretty bad, but it's also proprietary, so I can't replace it. At least it's held in with this pretty easy toolless mount that seems to hold it in place. As far as expansion cards for this thing go, the video card is an NVIDIA GeForce 2MX. Oh, nice. See, this is what I mean when I said the plastic on this thing is very brittle. At least it's a non-critical part. The video card is a GeForce 2MX. I don't really like this card very much since, as you can see, it doesn't have a heatsink on it and it runs pretty hot, but it's all I have. The sound card is a Creative Sound Blaster Live 5.1 CT4780, and it's alright. It came with this computer new, so it has the proper connections for the optical drives, and it's got a modem, but I don't need to pull that out and show you. As you can see, this PC has 3 more unused PCI slots, so I could add more things in here in the future. Oh, and it's also got 2 160GB hard drives. It originally had a 40GB hard drive, and maybe even had another 40GB hard drive, but it only had a single one when I got it, and 2 months after I got this computer, well... just IBM things. Anyways, it's time to boot the machine up. I realized that the BIOS on this computer does actually support a second diskette drive, but it didn't seem to work with the one I put in it, so maybe I just need a different cable. This is something I somehow missed until I updated it to version A09 from 2001. It has 2 Western Digital hard drives in it, because I want drives that are actually going to last. The DVD-ROM drive is a Samsung drive, and the CD writer is an NEC drive. We can also view the configuration for the RAM in this PC. The RAM speed runs faster than traditional PC 133 RAM, so I guess there's one advantage to it, and we can view processor information. As noted, the bus speed is slower than a traditional Pentium 3, which is kind of funny. This thing is probably never going to actually see a CPU upgrade since it's just not worth it. The newest CPU you can get for this computer is a 2 GHz one from 2001. This platform is basically just dead. Otherwise, there's not too much else to this BIOS. There's the typical boot settings and IRQ settings that you can change, but you can view the audit log where this thing had, well, just a few keyboard errors. This thing is very touchy with a PS2 keyboard. I'm using a USB one and it seems to complain a lot less. That's about all the really interesting things to this BIOS, at least it's custom. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and skip to the boot up phase of this machine. This PC is running Windows 2000 Professional on it. I chose this operating system because Windows XP seemed a little too new for this machine since it's a glorified Pentium 3 PC. But Windows 98 on this computer was a bit strange, so I chose Windows 2000. It originally came with Windows Millennium Edition, which is about all I really need to say. As far as programs for this PC, I don't have a ton on here. It's a clean install of Windows, and Dell doesn't have any software on their website. A lot of the stuff is mostly utilities and stuff that's boring, like the Dell Solution Center, which is a very primitive program that basically doesn't really tell you a whole lot. It's basically just a web shortcut to websites, which probably haven't worked since 2004. Pressing the button on the front of the case does in fact open this program, so it just seems like kind of a useless shortcut. It's got an old copy of Macromedia Flash, Music Match Jukebox, Nero OEM 6, Netscape Navigator, a ton of old PopCap games. These are basically the only games I've actually tried to run on this PC because I'm worried about frying the GPU on this computer since, again, it's the only one I have. But, to its credit, it does play Peggle, so good. It's the only game you ever need. This doesn't really mean much of anything since these are basic games meant to run on like crap hardware. But one of the games, Bejeweled Twist, does definitely show that this GPU does not like a lot of 3D acceleration, since even this game struggled hard on this video card. Of course, that's kind of to be expected. It's a video game from 2008 on a GPU from 2000. This PC also has an old copy of VMware Workstation 5 from 2005. I wanted to experiment with this on this computer since this has an old enough operating system for this. This PC actually doesn't do too bad at virtual machines. As you can see, I have a Windows XP VM and it's not too slow, to be honest. It could be a lot worse. It also has old Adobe Creative Suite software on it, such as Photoshop CS, where you can do Photoshop things. It also has Acrobat Professional 6.0, Adobe ImageReady CS, InDesign CS, and GoLive CS, and Illustrator, but I forgot to get footage of that. Whoops! And of course, since it's a Windows 2000 machine, you can't forget Office 2000. It's a classic. Finally, it has some old web browsers on it. Firefox and Opera 12. They're both version 12. This isn't extended kernel or anything, but Windows 2000 did still used to be able to browse on modern internet back in 2018 when I installed this copy of Windows. Nowadays, they don't really work anymore, so basically this thing can't go on the internet. I could do the Windows 2000 extended kernel stuff, maybe I still will, but I just haven't really been super bothered since I don't have much of a reason to go on the internet with this PC anyway. Overall, it's not a bad machine for its time. I've already done most of the upgrades that I wanted to, mainly the RAM and hard drive, since they were the two weakest parts of this computer before, and I still do want to upgrade that video card eventually. I would like to be able to run some more games on this machine, and maybe even in the future, convert this thing into a Windows 98 gaming machine. But we'll have to see. It's kind of hard to do with this existing motherboard. Regardless of this all though, this is probably one of my favorite machines, mostly just because of the processor situation. There's not really much else like it. Socket 423 didn't last very long. So, I'm proud to own this thing.